Excellent.
Okay, I'm going to read a letter dated July 11th, 2023, addressed to the Governor's Council. Dear councilors, pursuant to Section 142 of Chapter 54 of the General Laws, I hereby appoint Stephanie Everett as Suffolk Register of Probate to fill the vacancy left by the retirement of Felix D. Arroyo. Sincerely, Maura Healy, Governor. Ms. Everett, I know you have some distinguished folks here, so before we hear from you, we're going to hear from your witnesses, okay? And then, do you have any family members or close friends you'd like to introduce?
Just would like to acknowledge my husband, William Everett, is here.
And depending how it goes, we may or may not ask you questions. Okay, first we'll hear from, we have a witness list somewhere here. Well, why don't you introduce your witnesses? Oh, I got it. Attorney Allison Cartwright. And you can either stand or sit there, whatever's easier for you.
Thank you. Good morning, counselors. It is my distinct honor and privilege to be before you today on behalf of Stephanie L. Everett. I am here to tell you, first of all, I'm an attorney, as Mr. Chair has indicated. I have known, and I've been an attorney since 1992. I have known Stephanie Everett since she became an attorney. I have had the privilege to be able to initially to mentor her, but later to also learn from Stephanie. Stephanie is a very capable, competent person in every challenge she faces. And I have known her on the personal level. She has faced many challenges in her life, and she's not afraid to speak up and to speak out about the challenges of being a very young single mother, living in a shelter at one point with her baby. She has come this far. She has educated herself. She has helped to educate others. And she is very much community-centered in all of the work she has done. And I think that's reflected when you really look at her resume. She is a public servant at heart. And those are the skills that she will bring should you send her forward to be the Registrar of Probate for Suffolk County. If you have any further questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Well, thank you very much, Councilor Devaney.
Thank you. Welcome. When did you say you started as a lawyer?
1992.
Okay.
I became barred in Massachusetts.
You don't look it.
Oh my goodness, why thank you. Makes my day.
See, we were all just jealous. Excuse me. Tell me what quality that comes to mind that this nominee will bring to the job.
I think one of her strongest qualities is the fact that she never gives up. Stephanie is a hard worker. She will work tirelessly until she finds answers and until things are done in the manner in which they should be done. So I think that's one of her best qualities that I truly favor in her.
That's great. And how long have you known her?
20?
So, I really don't know how much it means to me to have someone that comes, not only knowing the nominee professionally, but personally. And I have to say, we've had people that sat there and I'd say, have you ever, seen the nominee in court? And she said once. And that's not enough, because the witness for us is to learn why you support the nominee, to tell us. And so I didn't get much that day, but you did. You knocked it out. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Next, we'll hear from John. How am I saying last name? John Stiles. Thank you.
Good morning, members. My name is John Stias. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today as a private citizen in my personal capacity in support of Stephanie Everett for the role of Suffolk Register of Probate and Family Court. I've been fortunate to serve as Deputy Director of the City of Boston's Office of Police Accountability and Transparency for the past 2 years, while Stephanie has been in the role of Executive Director. From the first conversation that we had about the office and the potential for me to join it, I sensed Stephanie's passion for her community and for helping those within it who may need some support. At the City of Boston specifically, Stephanie has been a tremendous leader for OPAT and a great colleague. Stephanie has always led OPAT with both her heart and her mind, and has carried her lived experiences as a deeply rooted member of this community into the work each and every day. Stephanie has defended the department when necessary, while also allowing our work to speak for itself in the face of criticism that tends to come for new organizations that are pushing for needed change in our society. Creating OPAT from rough guidelines within a city ordinance to a fully functioning department of 14 staff within 2 years has been a tall order, but Stephanie has built a strong and lasting foundation for the department that will endure long into the future. Each time that Stephanie and I do something like review a case report regarding a complaint we've received or an internal affairs file, I know with great confidence that Stephanie approaches each with the highest integrity and commitment to getting to the truth using the facts of the case at hand. I know that she will do the same in this new role. I've appreciated the opportunity to learn more from Stephanie about the legal profession, social justice issues, and leadership in general. From her own experiences, Stephanie has also brought countless impressive leaders from our city into our professional lives as staff and allowed us to grow through those relationships as well. In the past 2 years, it really served as an incredible education for me and the entire OPAT team, led by Stephanie. So in closing, Stephanie's impressive overall experience and her own personal interactions with this particular court make her a uniquely qualified candidate for the role. I wholeheartedly support the governor's appointment of Stephanie Everett as Suffolk Register of Probate and Family Court. Stephanie's personal story and life of public service to this point are certainly inspiring. Still, it is not done, and her appointment to this role as Register of Probate will just be the next step in her supporting underserved communities in the Commonwealth. And for that, we would all benefit. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilor Devaney.
Thank you. Thank you. That was very heartfelt. Can you tell me what this is a new position? What leadership qualities do you see?
Well, I think she brought not only her experience of being an attorney and everything that she collected in that role, but she's worked in the State House for many years. She's been in touch with elected officials. So she brings that experience, but also she was willing to, collaborate and really dig in on developing a new department. Because like you said, it is sort of uncharted territory. There's not a lot to go off of in terms of looking around the country for
What do you see about her working with the staff, fairness and that type of thing? What do you see?
She implemented things like, weekly staff meetings and our quarterly goal setting meetings, creating a collaborative environment for staff. And again, I know she'll do that as a goal.
So in your estimation, what does she bring to this position?
Well, a wealth of experience. And again, like I said, her own interactions with this court specifically in a personal capacity. And again, that experience as an attorney and starting a new department. I know this isn't a new court by any means, but I think nowadays our times have changed a little bit in terms of when folks need help, they seek out government, and this is an opportunity to assist with that.
Thank you. Can I just say, I want to tell you, I have sunglasses on because I had my eyes dilated earlier today, so I'm not trying to be.
That's fine.
Okay.
That's fine. Councilor Jacobs?
No, I'm good. You actually asked
Okay.
the questions that I was gonna ask.
Thank you very much. At this point, we'll hear from the nominee. If you could give us a brief statement as why you think this council should confirm you as the new Suffolk County Register of Probate.
So much. So first, I wanted to thank you all for having me here today, and considering my nomination for the candidacy for Register of Probate, and taking the time to even meet with me before today and bestowing some great words and words you have to prepare me for today, like many that's come before you. Nervousness and a lot of questions, and it doesn't fall by the wayside, the amount of time that you all take in prepping yourselves and me for this time. I would also be remiss if I did not acknowledge your Administrative Secretary Valerie McCarthy. She did an amazing job also in helping. I would also like to thank Governor Healy and Lieutenant Governor Driscoll for their support of my application for the Register of Probate, and confidence that I would serve the residents of Suffolk County with respect, professionalism, and care. I know that getting to this point was no easy feat, and I owe them a lot of gratitude for that. And lastly, but not least importantly, again, acknowledging my husband for being with me during today and every day before then, as I have ventured into this life of committing myself to public service, as well as our children, all 9 of them, and my family and my community family, which I'm happy to include those who testified already today on my behalf. My community family are my constant supporters. They've been around me and sharing me with the community for many years. They are people who have stepped up to make. I was a young girl when my parents were struggling themselves with mental health, substance abuse, and the jail system. As I've told the story before, my mother suffers from mental health issues, and my father, who passed away in 2010, spent most of my life, 90%, I would say, in and out of the jail system. And it really allowed me to be a little bit too free as a young child, but it did allow for me to welcome a lot of great people into my life, steer me in the right direction in a time that I needed community the most. And they wrapped themselves around me over and over again and again when I was 19 years old and I became a mother. And 2 short months before my daughter turned 1 year old, we found ourselves homeless. And I turned to the government for help. And no one expects to be on welfare as a goal in life, but that's where I was. And when I ended up on welfare, it was my first foray into learning what the Department of Revenue was, because I ended up at the Suffolk Family and Probate Court. And there I met the Department of Revenue attorney, and they hand you a financial form, and you become a pro se litigant, and you have to talk about your finances, and you are thrust into a world of litigation that you didn't know you were going to be a part of, because you are a new mom and they are seeking support from the non-custodial parent. All words that don't mean anything to you when you were 20 years old, right? And this continues to go on right now in the court. And so that was my first experience of being a pro se litigant. I didn't know what those terms meant. I didn't know what the form was that I was filling out. I was just told the date I had to show up, the forms I needed to fill out, and I did so. And so I was thankful later on in life that I would learn what those terms were. And despite my rocky path, I did find my footing a couple of years later when I found myself pregnant again with my second child, and I enrolled at Northeastern University, later receiving my degree in criminal justice. And then I worked full-time the whole time, and then I decided I needed to go to law school. So taking all of the experiences I had from growing up in Mattapan, witnessing a lot of my friends and family, again, my father being in and out of jail, I knew I wanted to be an attorney. Also watching Perry Mason a lot with my mom. So in my second year in law school, remember there was the House Counsel for the legislature was Zoli, and I decided I wanted to go into the legislature. So I started to intern at the Metropolitan Area Planning Council, working on a state-funded youth violence prevention grant. I left a paying job, did an unpaid job, and from there, I've never looked back, and I've been doing a lot of work around everything from housing to family. And then when I graduated from law school, I went into the legislature and became the deputy chief of staff for a senator. And everything I have done is due to my passion, what I wanted to get back. And so as I was preparing for this hearing, I did have an opportunity to speak to a shero of mine. And as I was thanking her for her contributions that laid out for me the path in the legal field and for me to walk and sometimes run, she graciously reminded me that I had been charting my own course this entire way. And so it forced me to look back over the years of the things that I had gone through and the road that I had laid for myself. And so I have proudly served as the chief of staff for the Department of Transitional Assistance, the very department I had to turn to when I was a young mother. I was a bar advocate, thanks to my mentor helping me get there, representing indigent defendants, many of who started off as pro se litigants, and they themselves had no idea what they were doing. And I helped them figure out what they needed to do. And they also had other needs that directly correlated to the probate court, whether they were going to go away for a while and had child support matters. And presently, I do serve as the executive director of the Office of Police Accountability and Transparency, where I created an office from 19 pages, creating structures, creating accessibility for communities that had worked decades asking for an answer for them to be heard on matters impacting them every day. So I know that the path that I've been laying is not just for me, it's for others to walk behind me. So it's been a little bit over 2 decades since I was a pro se litigant, but I'm here today to help others start to chart their own path. And because I know what it's like to be in a courtroom hallway, confused, and know that someone wants to take their time to expect you, and just want someone to take their time to expect you to tell them what it is that they want from me. Why am I filling out this form? What is the next step? What should I say to a judge? And I know that as a register of probate, I can do that. I can help someone understand what it is that these forms mean and what the next steps will be. I've lost a parent without a will, and I've been on that phone trying to figure out what I need to do, with tears trying to not roll down my eyes, as I do work to close out his life. And try to make these things make sense. I've also have been a foster parent, and I've been on that side. And I've been the attorney navigating through. So with that close, I know that there is a system that has a lot of challenges, and it will take leadership and commitment and collective efforts from everyone, staff, myself, and community to bring about the changes that we need to see. And I'm ready to take on those challenges. So I again thank you for your time today, and I ask for your vote to set my nomination for me to be the next register of probate for Suffolk County.
Thank you very much. Now we'll hear from the councilors. Each councilor will have a maximum of 15 minutes to ask questions. And the first will be Councilor Eileen Duff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Great to see you. Glad that you're up for this office. We certainly could use help here right now. As a Realtor, I deal with probate court and know so many of the things you just spoke about firsthand, because my clients go through the same thing. If someone dies without a will, pieces of paper get lost, staff doesn't know what to do with the piece of paper. I mean, these are just management issues, right? And leadership from someone with real life experience, compassion, and some empathy for the folks walking into the probate matter. And they matter more to me than, saying that you practiced law in that probate court for 20 years or whatever. That's nice, but that doesn't take place of real life experience that informs who you are and how you treat people in that position. So I'm excited about you. I know there's some people that say, you know, you may not have some of the, you know, courtroom experience that they'd like to see, but you have experience that we can't quantify, right? And that's what I try to look for, is something we can't quantify. We can't put our fingers on it because it's not something that is easily transferred into a resume. You've already gone over this, some of this, Attorney Everett, but tell me just succinctly, why this job? You know, why? And I know you said some of it, so you don't have to go through the whole thing again, but tell me a little bit about your passion for this, because the fact is you're gonna have to jump right in and run. You're right, you're gonna end up being in a campaign pretty soon for this too. So,
I believe that all my roads have been leading to this. I think sometimes we don't realize what roads we're on until they reveal themselves. But I know that I have the tools that I need to help those who need help. There's some challenges at the court, and I have the management skills to work on the challenges that are internal. And I know, again, having been a pro se litigant, what it means to people who need the help. There are some processes that we can put in place to help those who need it, who are pro se litigants, so they know what they need. I've been there, I have the compassion to understand. It's what we do now. It's similar to what one of my witnesses was talking about. What I bring to that office is all of me and some creativity of what we can do, bringing in some community partners, whether it's Chelsea Collaborative, ABCD, GBLS, or state legislators to help us think about some of the things. When you talk about your real estate and someone dying without a will, sometimes it's because they don't have the knowledge about what it means. We don't like to have conversations about end of life. But we can have these conversations in a compassionate way, and we can bring that out of the court. One of the things that I admire about my current boss, Mayor Wu, is having that conversation, bringing the probate court out of the probate court, bringing it into our communities. How do we make sure people have this information? So some of the basic things are done beforehand.
you know, you just completely spoke to me, and when you were speaking, before you even said that, I went to your resume and I underlined, I think the very last sentence that you said in there, which I think is so important that anyone who's an elected official on any level, but particularly in your job, in some of these jobs, you know, they're not sexy, they're obscure, it's kind of like us, people don't know, they don't know until they know. But what you said is, I am ready to lead the registry and bring the registry to our community. To me, that's wow. That's what we need. I think that's what we need. You know, some of us have, you know, for me, one of the things that we had the opportunity to do, because COVID turned everything upside down, was to bring some public information hearings into our communities. And the response was just unbelievable. You know, if people can't come to Boston, let's bring Boston to them, right? If people can't get into the registry, let's run workshops. Let's teach people, you know, let's empower people. That's what it is all about. And I think you are so uniquely qualified for this job, not just because of your law degree and your life experience, but your leadership ability. I'm a big fan of Mayor Wu's, even though I've worked for one of her opponents. I think she's been a great leader, and in a visionary leader. And you won't even be there, you know, because A players hire A players. That's one thing I learned in Washington, and that's one thing I've learned here. A players hire A players. So the very fact that Mayor Wu would have the confidence in you says a lot. And it also says a lot that our governor has the confidence in you to step into a place where we desperately need leadership and vision right now. And I, Attorney Everett, am happy to support you because I think you have the leadership and vision, plus all the life experience that seriously cannot ever be quantified on a piece of paper. And that's, to me, that's what we're looking for in government. That's what, you know, you're here to serve. This is public service. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Counselor Paul DiPaolo.
Thank you, Counselor. Good morning, Attorney Everett. Congratulations on the governor's choice to nominate you. I appreciated your statement. Everyone I've spoken to says good things about you and your reputation. When I think about this role, and I think about the probate court, and I think about it in my home community of Worcester, it's the same across the Commonwealth, no doubt. And you talked about the pro se litigants, so many dealing with mental health challenges, far too many victims of domestic violence, and the stress of entering the courtroom or the courthouse even, and finding your way to the probate court. And so the things you had to say about the perspective you gained in your life experience say a lot to me about the kind of manager you would be in this office and the things you would prioritize. So I just wanted to ask you a couple questions about that. When you're register of probate, what's going to be the public's, that pro se litigant, the person who hasn't been in the courthouse before and doesn't want to be there, what's going to be their first impression when they come in?
That we understand that they're welcome. That'd be very important that we speak to people and we meet them where they're at. Always important to me that people don't feel like they have to be an attorney when they're a pro se litigant. One of the things that I felt when I first walked in, and I don't, there's experiences that we all remember. I remember being a young 20-year-old having to sign my name and feeling like I needed to speak a certain way. We sit in a courtroom and their attorneys go first, and you're trying to pick up on the cues of what they're saying and what the judge is saying. And I don't want anyone to feel like they need to fit into that. They should feel comfortable in saying what they should say. I've also been an attorney and watched pro se litigants say things and you want to jump in. I've actually jumped in as an attorney. I've seen someone I've known try to defend themselves, and I stood up and the judge was like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "I know them. Can I please call a brief recess?" Because I can see when someone is struggling, trying to fit in, and we shouldn't make people feel like they have to use legal words. We can just use regular words. So for me, I want people to feel like they can, one, know that this courtroom's for them. The courtroom should not be mystery. Form should not be mystery. We should figure out whether it's given a glossary term so that the legal words make sense in layman terms for everyone. I think that's something that we can actually do, real simple. But I want people to feel like when they leave, what they came there to accomplish gets accomplished, even if it doesn't go with for attorneys. It doesn't always go our way, but whatever you set out to do was accomplished in that day. I think that's the biggest thing that we want them to do, and that they understand what happened to them that day.
And they leave with clarity.
Yes.
Come in, they're welcome, and they leave with clarity about the outcome or next steps. I heard one of your witnesses just briefly mentioned like a simple example, quarterly meetings or review meetings, or I presume to foster, well, I won't put words in your mouth. When, as a manager, you're not going to be the one dealing with the public coming in necessarily. There's going to be all the staff and the folks who work in the office. How are you going to, what's like one or two examples of ways you'd be able to build a culture in that office of not only the public service, but also the internal efficiencies, like, a culture of continual improvement for the organization itself?
If I am confirmed, one of the things I would be looking to do is creating an environment similar to what I do in my present job. What we do is, one, having staff meetings. I do have regular staff meetings. Every week we have a staff meeting. I'm not sure if that's something I would be able to do in the office setting as a courtroom. Obviously, it's a little bit more busier. What I do now is that I set goals with the executive team. And so those yearly goals are then broken into quarterly goals. And to get buy-in from the staff, we do have quarterly meetings with our entire staff. Doesn't matter what your title is. I want you to tell us what we can be doing and how we can better serve. Because as you said, they are the ones who are the front lines. They're the ones who see clients before, all day, every day. They answer the phones. They're the ones who are at the door. So they have a better sense of what the clientele needs. And how we deal with the quarterly meetings is they tell us what the next step should be. So I would implement the same things. I want to hear from them. I want them to know. A perfect example is that the budget thankfully just passed recently. But we were in two 1/12 budgets. I think it's important for me as a registrar to inform them of what's going on. So I need to give them information, they need to provide me information, and we need to come up with solutions together. Buying works in both ways. I have to feed them, they have to feed me. And so that's how I lead. I lead with communication.
And
And
collaboration, it sounds like,
yes,
which is good.
totally.
Just two more short questions, Counselor. Number one, you're going to be up for reelection if you take this role, right? And you're going to have to be in the public spotlight potentially. You're going to be making difficult decisions. How do you imagine yourself balancing, and I know you already have, I'm sure, in your career, how do you balance the decisions you have to make when there's tension between the outcomes, how the outcome will be viewed by the public as compared to your internal, kind of the practical day-to-day of what's going on?
I do, yes, I do that every day now. My bottom line is, it's not what makes me feel okay. I'm an individual. It's it's that what the community needs has to outweigh what I feel every day. The greater good. So if it's 1 versus 766 of Suffolk County wins. And so that's the answer.
And finally, so I know that you were on the CAFL panel for a time, and were you in juvenile court?
So I was at Norfolk County and Brookline. So Brookline, at that point, when Judge Daisy White, they were separate. So Judge Brookline did not going, recently, when I left, I heard that after post-pandemic or during pandemic, Brookline finally went over to Dedham. But yes, so I did the juvenile court on Allied Drive.
And I always ask, is it the same in your part of the state as it is in mine, that it's very difficult to get attorneys on the panel, that there's not enough attorneys?
Yes.
And in my neck of the woods, there's not enough attorneys, and there's a dearth of attorneys of color practicing in the area compared to the folks who are coming through the courtroom. That's my experience in Worcester and Worcester County. Is that
Yes.
similar, would you say?
That's the reason why I chose to do the Norfolk Bar.
Okay.
So for both criminal and for the capital panel, this is the reason why I did that. It was very specific. It's because I know that when I would go into Dedham District Court or Brookline District Court, the audience was very reflective of me.
Yeah.
But those on the other side was not reflective of me. And so I made it a point to be in Norfolk. And it's also how I got my foster son. I showed up at Suffolk family probate. My cousin had her son removed, and I was looking for colleagues, and Judge Johnston literally told me it's either he's coming home with you or he is going to foster care. And that was 9.5 years ago. And so 2 years ago, last month, we became permanently ours.
Fortuitous
Yes.
event. That's great to hear. I really, really appreciate that. And I know in Worcester, I've been encouraging employers and offices in Worcester to be recruiting diverse attorneys, because our courtrooms do look like the courtrooms in the rest of the Commonwealth, and the attorneys practicing there do not. And it makes it especially difficult when we know that there's such a need to diversify the bench, to continue to diversify the bench in all sorts of ways, like lived experience, ethnic, racial, everything. It's really difficult to do so when there's a dearth of attorneys practicing in the area. So I really, really appreciate what you just said about your approach to pursuing Norfolk. And I've probably taken almost all my time, so Counselor, thank you. But
Thank you.
Rob, next we'll hear from Councilor Terrence Kennedy.
Good morning. I apologize for being a little late. I told you yesterday that I might end up having to do a quick trial, and I did.
Went well.
I think we were talking about, we wanted to make the probate court not a mystery. Well, I've been going into courts for 40 years now, and it's still a mystery to me, so I don't know how the public's gonna figure it out.
This conversation, yes.
Yeah, we've talked a few times on the phone. You've answered most of my questions, and I'm gonna ask you some of those questions in this forum. I think you can anticipate what some of them are. One you might not. I was just glancing at your resume, and I noticed that you were on the Office of Police Accountability and Transparency.
Yes,
You still doing that?
I am.
Well, that ends, right, when you get this job?
Well,
I'm curious, there was an article recently I read about in the Globe dealing with that. It seemed to indicate that in the couple of years it's been in existence, that I think I read there was like 11 matters reported to them, and only one of them sustained where there was alleged misconduct on a police officer, and I think I read that was overturned. Was that accurate?
so it's not, we do a recommendation to the commissioner. So the commissioners,
Or overturned that one recommendation?
he could either choose to, the commissioner still has the ability to, we only do recommendations. So the commissioner has the ability to accept or not accept the recommendation of the Civilian Review Board, and he chose not to accept the recommendation.
So since this review board's been in existence, given that there's been like no police officers that have been disciplined because the one that you recommended it for was overturned by the commissioner, is that accurate?
That is accurate.
That's the way it was reported in the newspaper.
So,
With due respect to the press, I don't always take what they report at face value.
So I will say, if I may, that I am, the office was created 2 years ago. And in that time, we have been very successful in taking 20 pages and building up an office. There wasn't even a building. We now have a structure that is situated in Nubian Square in Roxbury. We have 14 staff members. We actually.
Do you manage those staff
I
members?
do. We have, Master First was hired for this role, for that role, the role I currently have. I was the only staff member for 7 months before I had John here join me. John's being very modest. John actually applied for chief of staff, and I told him no, he had to be my deputy. And he's done an excellent job. Together we have submitted 3 budgets in this city council. This year, we got to finally sit before the city council and successfully present our budget. We hired, again, we have 14 staff total. We've created a youth advisory council. We've hired intake specialists. We've created systems to actually, when you talk about the complaints, there was no system for complaints. We now have a system to have the complaints. We created the systems for dashboards. There's a website that you can see all this stuff on. So
Just out of curiosity, do the officers that the complaints make, does the union represent them at these hearings? Does anybody represent them? Do they have an opportunity to be heard?
So the hearings are totally different than what happens at the police department. So our hearings, they're not hearings, they're public meetings. So that,
Meetings?
yeah, so when they are interviewed by our investigators, they do have opportunities to be heard and represented by union members. Yes.
Okay, now, just with respect to your resume, which is very impressive, but when the first time I read it, and I said that to you during our first conversation, what did not stand out and what was not mentioned there was the probate court. It indicated that you, prior to being the executive director, that you were sole practitioner for a number of years, which I like a lot. I've been the sole practitioner for 40 years, so that means a lot. I know what that involves. But you were involved in criminal, parent protection cases, residential real estate, which I know nothing about, business formation matters I know nothing about, and that you had done a number of jury and bench trials in the criminal and juvenile sessions. What is not listed there is anything with the program. Have you handled any probate matters yourself?
I've done divorces, I haven't done wills, so as far
Done
as.
some divorces?
I've done 2 to 3 divorces.
Okay.
Divorces.
We've done 2 to 3 more than me.
Yes, I've also handled child support matters. I've represented clients in, child support and visitation matters. I did not say that. Yeah.
You are gonna be the registrar.
Yes,
I think that's pretty cool.
you all decide that.
Not highlight that on your resume that you've done some of those.
Because I did that when I first started my practice, and then because it wasn't a heavy part of my practice, so that's the reason.
It's a heavy part of the job you're going for.
No,
I would have had that in bold letters myself.
I see the point.
Just because that stood out, and knowing that you've done some
Yes,
makes a difference. It's not that you've done a lot, I get that.
yes.
I've spent very little time in probate court. My wife hasn't smartened up yet, so I haven't had to go in there after 38 years, but someday she will, but okay. So as I indicated, we've had a number of conversations. I am very impressed by a number of things. I think you have a lot of transferable skills, management skills to be a registrar of probate. I really respect how active you've been in terms of public service in a lot of ways. I believe you've run for office 4 other times, you told me. And why do you want to keep getting beat up?
Go where I'm invited and where I'm required, so
Yeah.
the public needs.
It's a hard thing to do. You know, you got to raise money, you have to gather support. But I think that you'll do fine. And the fact that you have to run for this office, isn't it up next year?
It is.
Yeah, so you got to start. You got to leave here and start the campaign. So you're gonna have to get going. You and Councilor Duff are gonna be working very hard next year. But I indicated to you earlier after our numerous conversations, that it was my intent to vote for you, and nothing that's happened here today has changed that. I think you're an outstanding candidate. I congratulate you, and I congratulate the gentleman for your nomination. Thank you. Oh, and by the way, one of your biggest supporters is sitting right there, Councilor Iannella. He actually called me pretty much as soon as you were nominated. He's a huge supporter. He thinks that you're exactly what Suffolk County needs. So.
Thank you very much. Next, we'll hear from Councilor Tara Jacobs.
Thank you. We had a great conversation, and talked about a lot of what, my fellow councilors have brought forward that I was going to introduce, but I feel like I don't need to at this point. But I just want to say I'm very excited that you've been appointed to, this role. I think you're exactly what we need. I think your combination of lived experience, professional experience, managerial experience, legal, you have such a diverse array of skills and experiences to bring to this that I think it's an incredibly exciting opportunity for you to step in and do some great work. I guess the only thing maybe that I can bring that I was thinking about asking you that hasn't already been addressed, kind of goes towards, probate court and the proportion of pro se that does appear in that court, and people who are in a stage of life that is just crisis oriented more often than not, be it divorce or custody issues or lost family members, and the emotional weight of that court, the cases that come through, and the state of life that people are in. I just wanted to give you an opportunity to talk about what you think, in terms of a vision or a plan, around access to justice for people, the self-representing, emotional place. Your thoughts about how you would approach that.
I always think of the family probate court. There's 2 emotions. Either you're very excited because you're getting your baby, or you're not. You're the other emotion because it's child support, it's child visitation, it's divorce. And so you should know what every day you should know what you're getting into when you're walking in. It's one or the other, right? And our job is not to judge someone on what's going on there. It's to understand that and to give them the tools they need that they don't necessarily have, especially for pro se litigants. What they may know, they may have heard from their friends, their cousins, their aunts, that may not necessarily be true. And this is the reason why we need to bring this information out into the community, to give them the right tools, so that when they are presented in a court with this wealth of information that someone's gonna throw at them, a financial form, standing in front of the court, all those things, waiting. Right? That's the other thing, you're gonna be waiting for a long time. There's an anticipation of what is going to happen on that day. So meeting people where they're at, giving them information in advance, those are the things we need to do. Our expectations for ourselves versus what someone may be going through in that moment is what they are going through, and we should expect that. We should anticipate what they're going through and understand it. I understand it because I've been through it. You may think we're going to court, we're gonna show up at 9 a.m. and we're gonna be gone by 10:30 because it's easy. It's an easy day. It's not an easy day. You don't know what the docket looks like. First of all, no one knows what the word docket means. Let's start there.
Yep.
Pro se litigants don't know what docket means. I mean, these are common terms that we can say it, but a lot of people don't know what it is. And so we need to be realistic about what we're asking of people and what they're asking of us. So my biggest word of 2023 is grace. Right? So give them grace, give ourselves grace. And if we do that every day, then we'll get someplace. And we can be proactive in giving out grace. So you be proactive when you walk into the community and say, here's some commonly used terms. So when you do go into the court, here's a packet on how you can prepare. No one wants to, we have 9 children, 4 grandchildren. We haven't sat down and done this whole, let's talk about what happens when we're not here. We talk about creating wealth in our communities. What do we do about sustaining wealth in our communities? That's the next step, right? So there's a lot of things that we still need to do, but we need to sit down and do those things, but no one really wants to talk about it. We have to figure out what that is, but we got to give ourselves grace to do those things.
I also wanted to, during our conversation, we talked about the myths
Yes.
that exist, the misconceptions, or the beliefs about things that are based not at all in law, but just these culturally held beliefs about how things will go. Do you want to talk about how you think
Yes.
about that?
My hood piano. So it's the common example I give is grandma passes away and I automatically get grandma's house. You don't automatically get grandma's house. This grandma doesn't have, if grandma has a mortgage on there, you can't assume the loan. Or if your credit's not great. Or there's just all these things. So we have to figure out what that is. So this is the sustainable wealth, right? So how do we sustain wealth in our community? My husband and I, our parents never owned homes before. So we are creating a generational wealth for our children. But we also have to teach our children how to sustain that wealth. And so our kids may just think like, when mommy and daddy aren't here, we're getting mommy and daddy's house. No, you don't just get it. You don't know what we have. I don't even think they know where to go to get the deed from, right? So it's those things that we have to teach our children. And I mean our children, our community are our children. So we have to taking the information out of probate, bringing it into our communities and having these conversations. So I've talked to Russell Holmes about doing financial literacy, partnering with community groups, bringing this information and really start diving deep. So it's not just creating wealth, it's sustainable wealth. It's what are you doing? What does it mean even if you go away to jail? No one likes to talk about this, but if you are on child support, what happens to your child support? You need to file a modification. Why are the trial court systems not talking to each other? So that when you come out, if we really do believe in reentry, you can't come out and hold $30,000 or $15,000 and then expect someone to actually be successful out and it's still compounding on top of that. We should be talking to each other. So there's a lot of things that we can do around this. We just have to have the conversations about what we're doing.
Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to voting for you.
Thank you very much. Councilor Marilyn Petito Giovanni.
I'm always the counselor that's chosen to come last to question, so here I am.
Excuse me on that. Excuse me. Excuse me. Excuse me. Excuse me. The way the system works here.
How is it?
Excuse me. Excuse me. The way the system works here, and I believe everybody will agree, who's ever cheering the meeting, okay, and that's my seat there, we always pick to the right. Let's assume next week, Councilor Jacobs is the chairperson. The first person would be Councilor Ferrara. The second person would be Councilor Devaney. So we do it 100% equal. Everyone has a chance to go first, second, third, and last. Councilor Devaney.
Well, that's new to me. We always did it in succession, 1 to 8, but let it go. I just want to tell you, it was such a pleasure meeting you. And I want to thank you for all the time that you afforded me. And I learned so much about you and your personal experience. People are leaving. And I think it's important to me that people have personal experience to bring to that position, so that they can understand the person that's before them, okay? And that's what I saw in you. And first of all, I just wanted, we're timed, so I'm gonna talk fast. They voted to time us. So anyway, just some housekeeping things, and you can send an amendment. Some of the yes and no questions, you put NA, and like, did you have any military experience? You put NA. And then you're required to give all the contributions you and your spouse have given the last 3 years and how much, and you didn't put the amount. So you can do that after. You can send that amendment. I just want to let you know. But first of all, I can't say in so many words how impressed I was, because in 24 years, I've never seen anyone with such compassion. Compassion in your personal life. As a lawyer, you represented people pro bono that couldn't afford a lawyer, represented children and families and people that had criminal charges. So you've seen it all. And also the awards that you have got through the years, Woman of Law, Rising Star, Super Lawyer, Woman of Color, Changing Our Community by the Eastern Stars of Princeton. That's important. You have been recognized for who you are. So I want to ask you, first of all, I can't even imagine. They established a new position and you had to do that. So you had to have the guidelines. Where are you going with this? So what qualifications do you feel that you were able to take this position on?
I think my commitment to my community was like the biggest thing, that really, and you're talking about the role that I currently have, or the new one? Okay. Or the executive director for OPAD. For me, when that opportunity came for me, I always look at a role and think, what do I have and what can I do to bring it about change? So in that role, there was no one before me. There was no positions that were created, and it was something that at the time I did a lot of research, and I knew that there was a voice screaming in our community that needed to be heard, and I was going to have an opportunity to help that voice, help the screams have a voice. And so I've been honored for over 2 years now to be able to give our community a voice. And not only just creating positions, but positions that have sustainable incomes, that also gave our youth voices. Having a youth advisory committee where our kids come in and they're actually building up structures now and how they will exist in our office. That's been amazing. We had a youth who came in last summer through the summer program with the city, and she was very quiet, but we had a meeting with the Commissioner Cox. We listened. The community said they hadn't seen Commissioner Cox. They wanted a meeting with Commissioner Cox, so we had a meeting with Commissioner Cox. And that youth who was very quiet graduated from Boston Latin School, this past June, and she actually moderated the meeting. So she went from being very quiet to being very much involved, and we stay involved with our kids.
Right.
So there's a lot of things in that office that I'm very proud of.
Now, in this position, it's very controversial. I'm sure that people don't always agree when, there's a complaint of a police officer or something. It has to be. So you had all that experience to bring to this position. So how does this make you qualified to go into the position that we're considering today?
For the position I have now, I think it's one there, it's not about whether I personally believe something is right or wrong. It is what is right and what is wrong. It's not, I know how to separate out what I believe and what the community needs, what's legal. There's rules and regulations that govern what the Boston Police Department can do. And then there's general law, same thing that occurs at the probate and family court. The differences, and then there's no difference. What I believe is if there are things that are ambiguous or need more clarity, then rise and let Allison also serves on our board, one of our boards. If there's something that I am struggling with, I'm not afraid to ask for help. I can bring it to any board member or ask another a legal authority. And even if I'm confirmed by you all, if I'm confused about something as a register, I can reach out to the other members in the Commonwealth who serve as registers and ask their.
Well, I really liked your answer in your questionnaire. And you said that you've experienced all sides of the family and probate court, representing their values, reflective of one of the largest population of the court's clients. You come home in their neighborhood every day, and and you say, and I know I am that person. I will work to ensure that resources are available to everyone, especially pro-litigants, ensuring they have the information they need to effectively advocate for themselves. When they enter the courtroom, there's a lot that I have learned in the registry of the probate court, and I, as a constant student, welcome the lessons that those who have been doing the work will offer. I am ready to lead the registry and bring the registry to our community. You couldn't ask for more than that. Now, I'm going to ask you something. We spent hours together, and it was really wonderful of you to give me that time. You don't have to go into it, and I'm not going to probe into your personal life, but your personal life, when these people are before you, you have endured more in your life than the people before you. I can't ask anything more than that, because you don't always get that. People don't have the life and experience that you've had. You and your husband have a large family, and you opened your heart and your home to a child. Tell us about that.
My son Mason has been with us since 2014. He said, he's my cousin's son, he's not but he,
Now, we're talking 9 children, this blended family, okay, to begin with.
So, yeah, we have a blended family. There's 4 boys, 5 girls. But, yeah, but he, I don't know how to explain it, but other than he needed a place to go. As Johnson literally he was in respite for one night. I was called in to locate, because I was doing CAFO cases in Norfolk. And I was just looking for colleagues who were going to be in that day. And I didn't see anyone who was there. But because I could sit in on juvenile cases, I went into the courtroom. And I was handed again a packet of I don't know what, because I didn't handle cases. I didn't have to do this for myself. I did it for everyone else. And I started filling out the forms. And my husband can tell you, he was not expected to have a nice child, as you can see. And I think I was filling out the forms with just as a placeholder in case someone did not qualify, but at the end of the day, it was either he was coming home with me or he was going back to foster care. And my husband can tell you that we rang the doorbell and there was a little tiny baby sitting at the door, and that's how we, realized that 8 wasn't enough. So we had 9 children now. And so Mason's been with us since March of 2014. And he will be 11, 25th of this month. There are some challenges with Mason, but we don't do step parents, we don't do half siblings. He's my son. And if you've met him, he will tell you that I have a mommy and a daddy, and that's it. And I have a lot of siblings. So yeah, Mason's.
And it hasn't been an easy road.
It has not been. He was a foster child until 2 years ago. And then because of the pandemic, it's slowed a lot of things down. But so we didn't get to go into the courtroom and raise our hand and do it over. And we did join in, our children who are older, we have 2 generations of children. We joined in on Zoom, we all raised our hand, and he permanently became ours.
And I'm not going to dwell into the personal part of this, but we talked, and I just respect you and your husband so much, because this was it was not an easy transition with the circumstances of this child and the burden that he came with, and all of that you're bringing to this position. And I have never seen anyone in 24 years that has all of this. So as a person, I so respect you, and I don't have a poker face. I've been smiling all the time to know that you're here and that you qualify for this job, because we don't always see people that are qualified to get the job. I see people in 24 years that shouldn't get it. It was a political position that they got. Not so with you. You earned it the old-fashioned way. You're qualified, your experience, you have the life experience that I look for. And I usually don't say this till after the vote, but I've got to tell you, I've got to thank the governor for accepting you, and for you to even qualify, to even go for this job. I'm glad you did, because you showed what you did in this position. Imagine it, never witnessed it. You had to. Some of the things that you.
Excuse me, unfortunately, your time is up.
Okay.
We have a rule here, and everyone abides by the whole. Next, we'll
Thank you so much.
hear from Councilor Joseph Ferrara.
Thank you. We spoke very briefly, but I did look through your resume. You have a big fan to my left here, and Councilor Iannella, who told me I must vote for you. So, given that, I don't have any questions for you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I don't have any questions. We had a lengthy conversation at my office. I was really impressed with you. You have such a nice demeanor. You exercise, from what I understand, good judgment. I think you're going to be a great registrar. I don't know if you'll be as good as my brother. My brother was the Register of Probate for about 14 years there. But I look forward to putting your name before the council at our next scheduled meeting, and I wish you and your family the best. Thank you very much. That will conclude, excuse me, before I leave. Is there anyone here in opposition? There being no one in opposition, that will conclude the hearing. Thank you.